Hello and welcome to an extra and topical episode of our Employment Law podcast with myself, Ian Abel.
And me, Daryl Smith.
So we thought today we would take the opportunity to record in a very hot boardroom. So please excuse us if we look a little bit hot. A topical version regarding some recent events and a couple of circumstances that have made the news.
Yeah, so I mean, the first one that we'll start with, we did address this on a previous podcast as well, the assault of Professor Chris Ware, sort of a household name at this point, I think. Everyone knows him. Yeah, absolutely. You may have seen the video that was circulating probably, 2-3 weeks ago now, with regards to an individual who put his arm around him, accosted him, did things that he shouldn't have done. That individual has grown in infamy at this point in time. I think if you went on to Google search engines, you'd be able to find him by name, etc. One thing I wanted to put to you, Ian, is at this point in time, I believe he is now lost his job. Obviously, this is outside his work. He's done this on his own time with his friends. How is it that he's lost his job? Can you just give a bit of an explanation to people watching this who might be a bit confused by that point?
Yeah, absolutely, Daryl. So first point you'd look at would be, did the employee have 2 years service? If he didn't have 2 years service, you can effectively be dismissed for any reason as long as it's not discriminatory. So if you had less than 2 years service, you would have seen the media storm, the backlash of his employers, employing somebody that publicly accosts members of the cabinet and the government, and you would just be able to dismiss them. And you would be able to simply say, you are dismissed because of your behaviour outside of work, and you would be completely fine and within the bounds of the law to do that. It becomes slightly more tricky if the person's got over 2 years service. The reason being, we in a previous podcast have discussed there are 5 fair reasons for dismissal.
Yeah.
Conduct would be the obvious one that you would look at, i.e. it's his behaviour. However, in the example we're talking about, it was outside of work. So that removes the ability to then use conduct in that manner.
Yeah.
So by default, that would put it under some other substantial reason. And you would, as we discussed in the podcast, have to justify that as a reason deserving of his dismissal.
Yeah.
So in this situation, how it would normally be badged as bringing the company into disrepute.
Yeah, I mean, I did see, obviously, as we were saying there, a lot of stories about him. His business is quite well known now. Obviously, I think pre-existing businesses were also put into the public eye as well. So I can understand that. So why is it that would result in him being dismissed? So
from the media coverage, obviously, some of this, and I have to say my own opinion of the media coverage of legal news is not great. So we're only based on the facts that are available to us. But he has lost his job and he's been fired for that reason. I'm not entirely sure the exact specifics of how they would have justified bringing it into disrepute. But from my understanding, he worked for an estate agents, and the estate agents were effectively contacted by customers and suppliers saying they would not use them anymore because they employed people who acted like this that way.
Yeah.
That actually makes the dismissal, if he did have over 2 years, very easy, because you could rely on that as evidence. Again, we've talked about in a previous podcast having a fair process. You could submit the evidence of people saying, we are no longer going to use your estate agents to sell our houses, etc.
Yeah. I mean, there's another topical fact that's come up quite recently as well, that the story, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm still heartbroken from what's happened quite recently and the England squad, and obviously not getting over that final hurdle. But the backlash from that, because of the individuals who missed the penalties, black individuals, really famous footballers, have got a massive amount of backlash from trolls on the internet, this, that and the other. You've seen all the insults, I'm sure. It's been the papers, the social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. Quite a large following was given to, I believe it was Savills. They have essentially had to put a statement out because one of their employees has tweeted some racial hatred language. Loads of people in that sort of similar vein tweeted the firm saying that they're going to remove all the business away from it, this, that and the other. That individual has been suspended, as far as I'm aware at the moment. I don't think that investigation is concluded. I did see a story about, I think he was arrested by the police, and the police are looking into it as well. Is that sort of similar in how they would deal with it?
It's still unfolding, that one, Daryl, given I think we were only knocked out on Sunday, and it's now the end of the week. So that would be If the company were doing things by the book, all we know at the moment is they've suspended the employee, that would probably tell me he's got over 2 years service, because they could have simply dismissed him otherwise. And they should be then going about their business and conducting a proper disciplinary.
Yeah.
Sadly, we live in today's world of the court of public opinion, and I have actually seen some feedback from the public saying he should be dismissed quicker, and why has he not been dismissed, etc. The reason is they need to follow a full process to cover themselves legally.
Yeah,
so
of course.
The fact that also there would be confidentiality, so they can't just go saying we have done this. So I think, as far as I'm aware, Savills has given a pretty good statement, which is saying, look, we are going through a process, we are dealing with it internally, which is legal code words, I suppose, for we're conducting a process, we're doing an investigation, and when we've concluded that investigation and reached an appropriate decision, we may well give an update to the public then.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'll keep my eye on. I'm sure you will do as well, and potentially issue an update in the future. Obviously, at this point in time, we need to see a little bit more and how it unfolds. But yeah, other than that, I think at this point, everything in terms of these public stories, obviously still unfolding, but we'll see what happens with them. Issue an update when possible. And obviously keep listening to the podcast and keep your eye on social media for us.
It's a great lesson as well, though, Daryl, in being aware of what you put on social media.
Yeah,
in the world that we live in these days, people film, photograph everything that they do, and without trying to sound unsympathetic, if you're going to film yourself, in our first example, committing a crime and then post that online, you should probably be aware that there may well be repercussions. So I think there's certainly lessons here in, one, don't behave that way, but two, not that I'm justifying it anyway, if you're going to behave that way, don't film it.
Yeah, I think we had the example of a robber with a GoPro before we were filming this, weren't we? So yeah, probably avoid that.
And the likelihood in today's world, that's probably already happened, Darren. Where it has been, a burglar wanted to put on his Instagram story about what he broke into. So anyway, that's a wrap for today's edition. I hope that you've enjoyed this impromptu episode and enjoyed seeing our faces as opposed to just hearing our voices. So thanks for tuning in. Again, any feedback would be welcomed. Thanks
very much.
Oakwood Solicitors, the experts in employment law claims. For any inquiries, please call 0113 200 9787 or email us at inquiries@oakwoodsolicitors.co.uk. Anything contained in this podcast is for information purposes only and not intended to be specific legal advice.